Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. I am Fakhr Lodi with the 18th lecture of Formal Methods for Software Engineering. In the previous lecture, we discussed JContractor. If you remember, JContractor is a pure Java implementation of design by contract. So we have discussed design by contract in detail, and we discussed JContractor to some extent in the last lecture, and we saw how we can use JContractor to build our contracts into our Java program and how can that help us. From the previous lecture, please remember that I mentioned that this JContractor is a pure Java application. That means a contract written in JContractor is also a pure Java program. So all you need to do is you need to know the Java programming language and some conventions that we use in the JContractor. Today we shall discuss JContractor in more detail, and I will actually demonstrate how to use JContractor and show you what happens when a contract is violated. And hopefully then you will appreciate the power of contracts, and you will see that by writing the contracts, the job of the programmer is simplified, because now the programmer just has to concentrate on the essential work and not on the error checking code. And this is of great help if we want to develop components, reusable components, where we say, okay, the contracts are defined, the pre and post conditions are defined. We say, okay, this is my input, this is the constraint of the input, and if you provided that input, this is my obligation. This is what I'm going to give you as a result of this execution. So this is all what we have to do. We will see in today's lecture. Before we actually go to the JContractor, the code itself and the executables, let me slightly briefly talk about from where can you get this JContractor if you wanted to play with it on your own. And I hope you will do that, and I urge you to please do that. Please download this JContractor and write your own contracts for different programs and see what can you do with this kind of tool. Now let me show you what this JContractor is and from where can you get it. JContractor, as I mentioned earlier, is an open source software which is freely available from this site, that is jcontractor.sourceforge.net. So if you go to this site, you can download JContractor from there and install it on your computers. All you need to have is, other than this JContractor, is the Java runtime environment and some Java development tool. As I mentioned earlier also, it is a pure Java implementation of design by contract, and hence you do not need anything else. You just need the Java runtime environment, JRE, whatever the latest version is. Now once we are ready, let us go to the computer and then see how can we use this JContractor into our program. So what I will do is I will first show you simple Java programs and show you, after executing the programs, the results of those programs, and then I'll start introducing the contracts into those programs and see what are the results and how do these results they help us. So how do these contracts they help us? So let us go to this program and see what this simple program is. In this simple program, I have a class bank account which implements clonable. And in this class, I have this int balance. And then I have the constructor that is this bank account, and it calls the constructor of the superclass, that is the base class, and I say balance is equal to 0. So this is my default constructor. Then I have the second constructor, bank account int amount, and I set the value of balance to be equal to the amount that I have passed into this bank account. Then I have the function deposit, which is public void deposit int amount. So it takes an amount and adds that amount to the balance. So that is the balance of the account. Similarly, I have a withdraw function in which I pass this amount, and that amount is subtracted from the balance, and I get my new balance here. And then this very simple get balance function which returns the balance, and that's about it. This is a very simple program, as you can see this. There is nothing very interesting about the program itself. There are a couple of things that I would like to mention here. The first thing was that I used implements clonable. In this particular example, probably it is not really very meaningful. I really don't need this clonable, but I need to have this clonable really when I write serious kinds of contracts. And why do I use this clonable? I will talk about that later when I use this concept of cloning an object. The other thing that you might have noticed, that the balance in this particular case is of type integer. Usually in an account, the balance would be of type some floating point number, some real number, or some fixed point number, not really an integer. But in this example, since this is not a real bank account example, I just wanted to keep it very simple. Hence, it is an integer number. So please don't worry about those kind of minor details. This is not really an abstraction of a complete bank account, because it does not have other information, for example, the name and the account number and the contact information and so on and so forth. So please don't be bothered about those kind of details, because that is not the purpose of this exercise. The purpose is not to talk about how to have a good object-oriented design and so on and so forth. The purpose is to show how to use this J contractor into our programs. So once those things are okay, we have this a very simple program in our software. And by the way, the tool that I am using for the development tool in Java, the name of this tool is Eclipse. Once again, it's an open source, freely downloadable tool available, and most people use Eclipse for developing their Java programs. So I don't think you should have any problem getting that tool from the internet. But you can use any Java development tool to develop these kind of applications. Now let me take you back to the program, and then let us write another function which uses this very simple class, and then we shall see some results there. So let me take you back to the program. Here is my class account usage. In this class, I have my main method. So the public static void main and string args, and in that main method, I have created my account. So bank account, my account is of type bank account, and I have just created with this 1000 there. That is, I have the initial balance is supposed to be 1000 rupees. This is my initial money that I deposit when I open the account. Then I have this print statement which prints the information that I want to have. Then I, in the next statement, deposit 500 rupees into my account, and I print my balance after that. Then I withdraw 1000 rupees from the account, and then I get the balance and print that balance. So this is a very simple 3 lines kind of thing. And the purpose of this class account usage is just to use the bank account class that I have created earlier. So let me save this and build this project. After building the project, I go to the console and run this program. So I have the name of this class is account usage. Please be careful. As you know, Java is case sensitive, so I need to be very careful about that. So my name of the class, the main function that I have is the account usage. So I run this class Java account usage, and I get this output, that is the starting balance was 1000, new balance was 1500 after I deposit 500 rupees, and then when I withdraw 1000 rupees, the new balance is 500 rupees. So nothing very special about it, as we expected. Now let us add another statement in my program, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just copy this statement. I copy this statement, and I'm withdrawing, in this case now, rupees, another, let's say 2000 rupees from my account. And so let me save it, let me build the project and run it again. So I run it again. You can see the output. Starting balance is 1000. That is what I started with. Then I deposited 500 rupees, so the new balance was 1500. Then I withdrew 1000 rupees, new balance was 500. Then I took 2000 rupees out of my account, and the new balance is now minus 1500 rupees. So you see what happened in this particular case. I had only 500 rupees in my account, and I took 2000 rupees from my account. That should not be allowed in the normal cases. I should not be allowed to take more money than what I have in my account. So this is what the problem is. So in this particular case, what is happening is that my client class, that is the account usage class, is not checking whether 2000 rupees are present in the account. So it should first check, and then it should withdraw that much money, whichever is available in my account. So in this particular case, what I need to do is I either write some checks in my code in the bank account class, or I write a contract with the pre and post condition and maybe some other conditions there also. So in this particular case, I can say that the account balance should never be less than 0. So what I am going to do is I am going to write that condition in my class and then use the JContractor, and if that condition is violated, an exception will be raised. So let us go back to the program and see how to do that. So what I need to do is I need to add contract to this class, bank account class. So I write this small contract here, and what I am saying here is I am saying this is an invariant, this is underscore invariant. Remember the naming convention? We said if we wanted to have a class invariant, that will be implemented with this method underscore invariant starting with capital I, and then I can write my condition there. Once again, a contract method has to be a protected method, and it returns a Boolean value back. So remember this thing. That is, it should be a protected method, it returns a Boolean value back, and the name of the invariant is underscore invariant. These three things. Now I have my contract in my invariant condition. The contract is a very simple contract. I say balance should always be greater than or equal to 0. That means I should never be in a situation where my balance is less than 0. And that will be in the case when I withdraw more than what I already have in my account. So I have added this contract into my class. So once again, I save it, I build the project. Now I run the project. I run the project with the same Java account usage, and as you can see, nothing happens. It's exactly the same output that I was getting earlier on. So what I need to do is, I need to involve JContractor in here. So how do I do that? I say Java JContractor. Note that the JContractor, J is small and C is capital. C of the contractor is capital, and then I say account usage. So I have Java JContractor account usage, and now I execute it. When I execute it, interesting things are happening. I get the first output, starting balance is equal to 1000. That was the starting balance of my account, the amount that I deposited. Then I have this new balance 1500. Once again, I added 500 rupees to my account. I got 1500. Then I have this new balance is equal to 500. That was when I took 1000 rupees from my account. Then I have this message, JContractor exception occurred. And then I have this edu.ucsb.ccs.jcontractor .invariant violation error. JContractor exception class invariant violated, and then there is this detail when this JContractor invariant was violated. Now you see what happens here. As soon as the contract is violated, I get an exception, and it tells me which particular contract has been violated. In this particular case, this happens to be the class invariant contract. So ये बड़ा एक simple सी ये चीज़ है. So in this particular case, C हमने अपने बेसिक प्रोग्राम में जो क्लास जो थी itself, उसमें हमने कोई चेंज नहीं की. अगर हम ये प्रोग्राम बगैर जे कॉन्ट्रैक्टर के रन करते, चाहे हमने ये बीच में कॉन्ट्रैक्ट लिख भी दिया था, अगर जे कॉन्ट्रैक्टर को बीच में इन्वॉल्व ना किया जाए, तो ये जो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट जो हमने लिखा है, ये जो फंक्शन जो हमने ऐड किया है, दिस फंक्शन इज इग्नोर्ड, इट इज नॉट यूज्ड. क्लास के बाकी कोड में हमने कोई चीज़ चेंज नहीं की. यहाँ पर आके हमने एक इनवेरिएंट कंडीशन चेंज की, एंड एज सुन एज दैट इनवेरिएंट कंडीशन इज वायलेटेड, आई गेट an error there, an exception is raised, and I get an error message. So this is what we get when we use JContractor. Now let us assume that I deposited some amount, but my program, when it invoked that method deposit in my bank account class, the amount that it gave as input was a negative number. So in that particular case, if I have not checked for that condition in my class, that means my amount will actually be subtracted from the balance, and I will get a new balance which will be a less number. The point really is that the client should not be allowed to send a negative amount as a parameter. So how can we do that? How can we check against that? Either we write code inside the deposit class and make sure that this amount is not negative, or we can write a contract, and in this particular case the contract will be the precondition. The precondition should be that this amount cannot be negative. So the client, if the client violates that precondition, the exception will be raised. So let us see that. So let me first use this without writing a new contract, without writing a new precondition, and let me just put this as negative number and comment the rest out. I don't want to raise too many exceptions. So let me just do that. So what I have done is, in the deposit method, I have passed this number which is minus 500. Okay. So my new balance in this particular case would be that much amount subtracted from my starting balance. That is, I should get 500 after I deposit this much money. So I have saved it. Let me build the project. And now let me run it. So in this particular case, see what happens is, I have the starting balance which is 1000 and I have this new balance which is 500. Now this new balance, this thing is not allowed. It should not be allowed. I should not be able to pass a negative number as an input. So what I should do is, I need to write a contract in my class. So I write a contract. This contract is protected Boolean deposit precondition. Remember once again the convention, the naming convention that we are using here, that is deposit underscore. So this is the name of the method for which we are writing the precondition. So we write the name of that method and we say underscore precondition, and it should take the same set of parameters or same types of parameters as the original deposit function. And in this particular method, I'm saying that this method returns amount which is greater than equal to 0. So the amount that is input should be greater than or equal to 0. So I compile it, I build it, and then I build the project, and then I run it with JContractor. When I run it with JContractor, I get JContractor exception occurred after starting balance 1000. So that was the next statement. And in this particular case, it is telling me that is JContractor.precondition violation error. And then it is telling me, the details of where this precondition violation error occurred. Now we have seen two very simple contracts. One, an invariant condition, and the other a precondition. And see how this helped us in making sure that these contracts are not violated. And as soon as the contract is violated, an exception is raised. Note one thing here, that in the case of invariant, when the condition was violated, that meant some invariant property was not fulfilled. So it could be because of the client program, or it could be because of our server program. We are not saying anything. But in the case of precondition, when the precondition is violated, that means the client program is violating the contract, the obligation that is imposed onto the client program. So there is nothing wrong on this side, that is on the server side, but there is something wrong on the client side. So the client is responsible for this error and not the server whenever the precondition is violated. So we have seen these two very simple contracts, and I hope you would have understood the basic operation of GA contractor and the basic methodology behind this whole thing, although we have discussed it in more detail, in great detail in the previous lecture. Now let us talk about a little bit more complex, more involved example in which we shall be looking at more concepts, post conditions, the conditions on the constructors, and using the old and the result and so on and so forth. All those different things will come into the play, and I also will talk about the cloning part and why do we need this cloning and so on and so forth. So this example that I'm going to show here is the example of a stack. We have discussed this example previously, but now I will show you actually, after writing the code and the contracts, and will show you what happens when a contract is violated. And then different concepts will be elaborated here. So let us go back and look at that example of a stack. So here is my stack class. Class my stack implements clonable. Once again, I will talk about clonable a little later. It has three private members. The elements, which is of type objects, and we need to store them in an array or a vector. And then we have the top and the max. Top is the current top of the stack, and max is the maximum size of the stack, maximum number of elements that it can have. Then we have the default constructor in which the top is set to be 0 and max is set to be 10. And then we create this array of elements which can have now 10 elements. Then we have the other constructor which takes a size as an input, and it creates a stack of that size, and there is nothing special about it. So we have these three statements there. The push function, once again, is the same push function, except for we have this try catch block, and in this try catch block I have this old is equal to my stack clone. I will talk about that later. For the time being, I'll just ignore it. And if I come out of this thing, it simply adds the element, the object that has been passed to the stack, and then increments the top pointer. So this is what it is doing, nothing very special. The pop again is the same old pop function. It decrements the top pointer and then it returns the value that has been stored at the top previously. So nothing special here. Is full, top is equal to maximum, then that means it's full. Is empty, top is equal to 0, is empty, and the size is equal to top. So this is my stack class, and as you can see, I have not put any error checking code in there. Otherwise, it's a very simple, straightforward stack class. Now I have the stack usage Java. In this particular case, I am creating a stack of size 2 here. 2 because, I just wanted to show after a couple of push operations, it should go out of bound and it should crash. So what I do here is I have a push, and then I pop, then I push again, then I push again, and then I push again. So after the first push, I pop. So once again, the stack would be empty at that point in time. Then I have 3 times push 23, and then I push integer 24, and then I push integer 0. And since the stack size was 2, so after the on the last push, that is when I'm pushing this 0, it should crash because it would run out of bounds here. So let me run this program. I have already compiled the program. Let me run it. So I run this program, Java stack usage, and I print this push, pop, push, push, and push. Then I have this exception in thread main, Java lang, and so on and so forth. It does not tell me what happened really. It says out of bounds, but what really happened, it does not tell me anything about it. So I need to add some contract there. So what I do is I go to my Java class and I add a contract in the Java class, and the contract is that I will say, once again, I have this my stack old vector implementation. Let us not worry about it for the time being. And I have this. So now I have added this contract precondition for push underscore precondition, object O, and in this I'm saying it is not full, and the object that I pass, which I need to store onto the stack, is not null. So in this contract, I am checking this condition is not full. So that means if I run this program with my JContractor now, it should give me the precondition violation error, and let us see if it does that. So I have this Java JContractor. I execute this thing and see what happens. Push, pop, push, push, and push. And in this case, it is telling me JContractor exception occurred, and it is saying this is precondition violation error. That means something wrong with my client program. So I need to go back and check for the error, and hopefully I will be able to find that and fix that error. Now let us go back once again and look at another. I make a slight modification here. I create this stack, and the first operation that I do is the pop operation. So I say s.pop. Now when I pop without pushing anything onto the stack, that means this is an error. And once again, if I run it with my Java program without the contract there, let's see what happens. So exception in thread main, index out of bound exception -1, and once again the error in this particular case is the same as the error we saw earlier when I tried to push too many times and I was going out of bounds. In this particular case, it is saying the index is -1. In the previous case, it was saying index is 3, but the same exception is being raised here. But if I use that JContractor and write the precondition for that, so let me write the precondition for pop. That is, before I pop, I should be able to check if the stack is not empty. So this is the condition here, that is precondition, pop precondition, return not is empty. So if I do that, and if I run my program with this JContractor, now I should get the precondition violation error, and then it tells me which precondition actually failed. So I have this precondition violation error, and it is telling me that the precondition for the pop operation that was violated, and hence if I go back and do something, I will be able to catch this error. Now let me try to show you something more interesting. Now let us assume that there is something wrong in my program, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this minus minus top in my pop function. That is, in my pop function, I am changing the top twice, where I should be changing it only once, but there is some error and by mistake I did it. If that happened, okay, if I had a contract to check for this kind of condition, that contract will tell me that there was something wrong, and let me write that contract. So the contract in this particular case is, I have this invariant condition. I can write this contract in many different ways, but one way that I chose to do that is, in the invariant condition, I say the size is always greater than or equal to 0, and size is always less than or equal to max. So I have this invariant condition. So when I have this pop function in which the top was decremented twice instead of once, that means if I did the push operation and then I did the pop operation, then my invariant condition would be violated. So let me check that. So let me do this here. Let me take this out, this error that I have. So I go back to the previous one. I have this push and then I pop. And in this pop case, the invariant should be violated because it was actually violating my invariant condition. It was decrementing the top 2 times, and that would bring that less than 0. So let us do that. Let me build it and run it again. See what happens? I do the push and then I do the pop, and it is telling me J contractor invariant violation error. So invariant violation error means, most probably something wrong with my code. So I will go and look at the code and then check it. I could have written some post condition with the pop function also. That would have given me the value, but I chose to use the invariant condition. But let me also use the post condition in the case of my push function. What is the post condition in the case of push function? We have seen the precondition, but let us look at the post condition for the push function. Here is the post condition for the push function that we have written. I have to have the same type of data that is input to this function, and then in the post condition, I must have this void result. In this particular case, since my push function was not returning anything, so the post condition had this void result in it. Now, let me take you through this post condition that I have written. In this post condition, we are saying that the element, the top element at the stack, remember that the value of top is 1 plus the last element pushed onto the stack. So now it is pointing to the next empty slot. So on the previous slot, that is top minus 1, we get the value O, that was the object input to the push function. And the size of the stack is equal to the size of the old stack plus 1. Now here is my old variable, old stack. And what is this old? Let me talk about it a little bit. In this particular case, I declared this private my stack old, and on top of this thing I said my stack implements clonable. What does that mean? And another thing that I did was, in the push function, I had this old is equal to my stack clone. यहाँ पर 2-3 चीजें जरा ज़हन में आपके रही है. Java में, when I have two objects A and B, and when I say A is equal to B, a copy of B is not created. A and B, they are references only. So what happens is a copy of the reference is created. So when I say A is equal to B, it is kind of a pointer. And now A, this reference A is pointing to the same object that B is pointing to. Separate copy of B is not created. So if we wanted to create a copy, either we had to write a copy constructor, or we have to tell this Java runtime environment that this particular class, first of all, it is clonable. By default, this class is not clonable. And then we use this clone method. We can override this clone method also, but by default, I can use this clone method, which is given in the object. This clone method makes a copy, a clone of the object that I want to make a copy of. So now we are talking about the binary copy of the object, not just the reference. So in this particular case, in the post condition, what I wanted was, I wanted to check certain condition vis-a-vis my initial input. So what I did was, in the push method, the first thing that I do is I make a clone of my stack. So when I make a clone of that stack, all the data that we had, that data is copied there. So it will have the size and the other top and max and so on and so forth. All those things, the elements, everything will be copied there. And now I can make comparisons. In this particular case, I'm saying that the top in this particular case is 1 plus the top of the previous. Or I'm saying now the size in this particular case is 1 plus the size of the previous one. So that is my post condition here. And if that condition is violated for whatever reason, if I, for example, wrote something incorrect, then that condition would be violated and I would be notified accordingly. So let us see what happens there. So let me correct this, the pop here, and let me, in the push, I increment top once again. So when I increment top once again, that condition here, both these conditions, they would be violated, because now this top minus 1 will not be equal to O and the size will not be equal to old size plus 1. So, at the moment I'm not really concerned about which particular thing is violated, but let us now compile it and execute it. Build the project. So in my stack usage, I just push, and when I push, that condition would be violated here right away. So I use the JContractor to check the contracts, and what happens? I push. As soon as I push, it says exception occurred, JContractor post condition violation error, and my stack.push has this post condition violation error. So आपने देखा कि किस तरीके से मैं ये JContractor की मदद से मैं अपने प्रोग्राम में मैंने कॉन्ट्रैक्ट लिखे, और जो ही किसी भी वजह से कोई गलती हुई, चाहे मुझे वो लॉजिक बनाने में गलती हुई मेरे अपनी क्लासेस के अंदर, या कि मेरे क्लाइंट ने गलत प्रोटोकॉल यूज़ की, फौरी तौर पे अगर मैंने वो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट लिखा हुआ है, अगर मैंने ये चीज़ स्पेसिफाई की हुई है कि किस चीज़ को चेक करना है, फौरी तौर पे वो एक्सेप्शन रेज हो जाती है एंड द प्रॉब्लम इज आइडेंटिफाइड. Not one thing here which we talked about last time also, that this exception is not really an exception. It is not an exception in that way, in that manner that we ordinarily have exceptions and then we catch those exceptions and then we recover from those exceptions. When an exception occurs because of JContractor contract violation, that means there is some logical error. It is not a runtime exception like, for example, could not find the database where you wanted to make the connection to the database. You were trying that, but the database was not found or the file was not found, things like that. It is not a runtime exception like that. It is a logical error. So this exception should not be caught like that. This exception should be treated as a bug in the program, and you should try to fix that bug instead of catching that exception in kind of catch-all and then sending some message and then recovering from that. That is not what it is supposed to be. Another very important aspect to note and remember is that JContractor comes into play when you want it to come into play. It does not come into play automatically. If you write a contract, the contract does not come into play automatically. It will only come when you want to check the contract. Note that this contract checking has a very heavy runtime overhead. And some of the contracts, as I mentioned earlier, they are quite heavy. For example, in the case of binary search, if I wanted to make sure that the data that is input to the binary search function is sorted, that means I will have to check the entire array and see if the elements they are in the given order or not. Now that in itself is much more expensive as compared to the binary search function. Binary search function, to remember, is a log n time complexity, and this is an big O of n time complexity, this just checking. So this JContractor is used for debugging and at the development time only and not at the runtime. I hope you would have enjoyed this JContractor, and I hope you will download it and execute, write your own contracts and see what happens when things are violated and see how does it help you in developing programs. So with that, we conclude our discussion on JContractor, and in the next lecture we will start with a new topic. Till that time, मुझे आप इजाज़त दीजिए. खुदा हाफ़िज़ और अस्सलाम वालेकुम.